It is the essence of nature that all living things exist in fragile equilibrium, in delicate balance with one another, that like the instruments in a finely tuned orchestra play upon the landscape in perfect harmony. Daybreak at the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex introduces a discordant cacophony of sounds, a seemingly unrehearsed, noisy prelude to a symphony of the wild that's been performed for thousands of years, but may be seen and heard today only in a few remaining theaters of native California. The American Bird Conservancy recognizes the 6 refuges of the Sacramento complex as globally important bird areas because of their unique and vital role in the conservation of wild birds worldwide. The complex also has the greatest concentration of waterfowl per acre in the world, as well as supporting some of the smallest populations of rare, threatened, and endangered species. The Sacramento Refuge is the keystone of the refuge complex that includes Sacramento, Delavan, Colusa, Sutter, Butte Sink, and the Sacramento River National Wildlife Refuge from Red Bluff south to Princeton. The Sacramento Refuge features the complex headquarters with a modern visitor center. Thousands of visitors have the opportunity to participate in diverse wildlife-dependent recreational opportunities on 5 of the refuges in the context that wildlife comes first.
They look all white, but when they fly, they have black just on the tips of their wings.
Each season offers new wildlife to view and panoramic scenes to enjoy. Although peak waterfowl season is fall through spring, the best viewing months are November and December. Wildlife observation and photography are among the most popular visitor pastimes. Touring by automobile on scenic routes accords travelers excellent views of wintering wildlife and their habitat from the comfort of a vehicle, which most importantly minimizes disturbance to the natural inhabitants. Ecological exploration along trails provides visitors unlimited opportunities for discovery, as well as quiet respite and sanctuary from the often frantic pace of human activity elsewhere. Environmental education is the foundation for awareness and an understanding of the complexity and importance of these wetland and riparian ecosystems.
What's growing out there?
Students of all ages, from elementary school through college, are welcomed year-round to expand their knowledge of natural phenomena. Well-regulated hunting during specific months is allowed on designated refuge areas. By doing so, the ageless traditions of waterfowl and upland game bird hunting are carried forward for each generation in a safe and productive way that's environmentally consistent with the scientific management of wildlife populations. Millions of waterfowl find sanctuary on the Sacramento complex. They arrive by way of an ancient route, a well-traveled corridor known as the Pacific Flyway, a highway in the sky. It's one of 4 primary pathways that prescribe the itinerary of North America's migratory waterfowl species. By design, many of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service's more than 540 national wildlife refuges occur like stepping stones along these prehistoric aerial byways. America's National Wildlife Refuge System conserves and manages some 95 million acres of habitat to accommodate nature's biological diversity, an area the size of Alaska. President Theodore Roosevelt established America's first wildlife refuge at Pelican Island in Florida in 1903, an unlikely product of a then trendy demand for wild bird feathers with which ladies' wardrobes were adorned. Market hunters decimated wild bird populations and in so doing caused public outrage. The Migratory Bird Treaty Act was passed in 1918. It is an international agreement that helped form a legal framework for the conservation of natural resources. In 1934, another innovative conservation law was enacted, the U.S. Migratory Bird Hunting Stamp Act, commonly called the Duck Stamp Act. It addressed the need to endow wetlands for waterfowl. About 98 cents of every dollar raised from stamp sales goes directly to fund the acquisition of wetlands for migratory birds. 3 of the Sacramento complex's refuges were acquired with funds generated by the sale of federal duck stamps.
I'd like to buy a federal duck stamp.
Whenever one is purchased, its collector affixes a personal stamp of approval to the National Wildlife Refuge System and its mission of wildlife and habitat conservation.
This duck stamp is good for admission to all national wildlife refuges, as well as for hunting purposes.
Consistent with that mission, the Sacramento complex is managed as the seasonal or permanent home for more than 500 species of animals and plants. 21 rare, threatened, or endangered species use the refuge complex. Many of those species occur within the nearly 12,000 acres that comprise the Sacramento River National Wildlife Refuge. The Sacramento complex owes its beginning to a convergence of events that produce partnerships of commerce and conservation born out of necessity. To understand, look back in time. Before the arrival of modern settlers, Native Americans sparsely settled the Sacramento Refuge region. This area, known as the Colusa Plain, was a relatively flat region punctuated with seasonal pools and swales and dissected by seasonal streams. Waves of settlers, however, migrated west in search of prosperity in the Golden State. Centers of commerce and culture grew from sleepy hamlets. Ranches and farms converted once natural lands to crop and rangelands. And California's free-flowing rivers were impounded to preclude lowland flooding and to divert water for agricultural and domestic use. 4 to 5 million California wetland acres were reduced to less than 300,000, a loss of more than 95%. Although natural habitat continued to erode to other uses, the annual cycle of waterfowl migration continued. By genetic predisposition, reinforced by season's changes, waterfowl leave their Alaskan, Canadian, and Siberian nesting and breeding grounds. As summer's warm days wither into fall's icy cold nights, snow blankets the Arctic landscape and covers the food resources needed by waterfowl. Southern migration to more hospitable environs becomes inevitable. Before the creation of the Sacramento complex, the massive concentrations of waterfowl that descended on the Sacramento Valley devoured agricultural crops that replaced their natural foods, and farmers demanded protection. The creation of the original Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge in 1937 helped to reduce waterfowl crop predation, restore lost wetlands, provide wildlife sanctuary, and fashion an earthly place where truly wildlife comes first. The task of creating the Sacramento Refuge proved formidable. It required an artful blend of biological science, engineering, and physical labor. Marshes, wetlands, ponds, riparian areas, and uplands of the refuge were created from the need to replicate seasonal flooding of the Sacramento River and its tributaries that inundated the region periodically. The first Sacramento Refuge builders were 150 Civilian Conservation Corps members, enlisted to establish Camp Sacramento at the site now occupied by the complex headquarters. Their effort produced dynamic results. In the decades that followed, refuge staff and other partners continued to engineer and build the other 5 refuges. About 1/3 of the waterfowl that migrate along the Pacific Flyway winter in the Sacramento Valley, about 3 million ducks and 750,000 geese. The Sacramento complex alone hosts roughly 2/3 of the entire winter migratory bird population of the valley. The 35,000+ acres of the complex represent nearly 10% of California's remaining wetlands and about 5% of the state's riparian or waterside habitats. The significant waterfowl populations that occupy the Sacramento complex result in some of the most densely populated wildlife habitat in the nation and require intensive year-round habitat management, a continuing challenge. More than 1,500 water control structures distribute some 100,000 acre-feet of water from nearby creeks and the Sacramento River, and are used to regulate the depth and surface area of wetlands. Marshes are flooded during the fall and winter to provide ample food and cover. In the spring, as waterfowl leave for their breeding grounds, marshes are slowly drained to encourage plant growth and concentrate insects and fish for resident wildlife and shorebirds en route to their summer homes. Every 3 to 5 years, permanent ponds are drained to remove silts and recycle nutrients, creating the best possible ecological conditions. In addition to water diversion and manipulation, prescribed burns, disking, mowing, and pond excavation help create and maintain wetland diversity and productivity. Besides feeding on refuge lands, hungry waterfowl still visit surrounding rice fields. Many rice growers reflood their fields following harvest. When that occurs, a form of cultivation by conservation is achieved. As explained by Agriculture and Recreation Lands Manager Doug McGeegan to Paul Butner, the California Rice Commission's Environmental Affairs Manager.
They come into the field in large numbers, and in their process of foraging for weed seeds and waste grain and protein sources and so on, they tend to manipulate the straw into the mud, which really speeds up the decomp process.
Wherever lands are managed for wildlife, care must be given to ensure that all species populations remain strong and vigorous. Refuge scientists monitor and evaluate the environmental health of the complex continuously. They study the intricate interrelationships among living things and their environs and constantly adjust management strategies to meet wildlife's needs. Avian diseases are not harmful to people, but may cause epidemic lethal impacts to highly concentrated migratory birds. The diseases are monitored using airboats that skim the shallowest marshes and deepest ponds with minimal habitat disturbance. Species population surveys are conducted routinely by airborne biologists who use precision aerial monitoring techniques and corroborate their findings with ground-level studies. Management of the Sacramento complex extends beyond its boundaries to embrace multiple interests. Collaborators include the California Waterfowl Association and its diverse educational programs for youth, Ducks Unlimited, that provides vital funding for refuge habitat projects, the California Department of Fish and Game, which cooperatively manages the Refuges hunting program, a variety of agricultural interests, and others. Together, their alliance helps ensure the perpetual protection of wildlife and a wide range of wildlife-related recreation opportunities. The Sacramento complex acquires conservation easements on private lands and administers the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program throughout the Sacramento Valley. These programs are vital partnerships that provide habitat for wildlife, enable properties to remain in productive private ownership, and support landowners with technical expertise.
We've been able to use the Partners for Wildlife program to help cost share in a lot of circumstances to actually go out and plant and restore riparian habitat, planting willows and cottonwoods and providing additional habitat for wood ducks and other riparian-dependent species.
Thus, the synergy of collaboration combined with science-based management orchestrate the Sacramento National Wildlife Refuge Complex's unfinished environmental symphony to embody a masterpiece of stewardship that's performed in endless concert. It is a practice performance for an audience of wild things, dependent on each season's ecological refrain, and played on a stage where visitors are allowed a retrospective insight into native California.